I think sevens are just a completely unique animal. I don't think it relates in terms of pressure to anything because there is no tomorrow. As much as they love interacting with you people, as often as we have been afforded the opportunity over the last, they can just drop the puck and play hockey, and that will be a nice thing for them.
Yes, welcome to Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Final, and welcome to the last hunt for the Cup. Mike Cunha alongside Steve Goldstein. Goldie, we kept saying that a lot after Game 3. This might be the last one. This might be the last one, but here it is. We are finally here. We've been to two different countries, but both fan bases saying the exact same thing. We want the Cup. That is what is on the line today. Goldie, the historical significance of what we're about to see is what for both teams?
Well, it is always big. Teams play for championships every single year. For the Edmonton Oilers, even if they don't win, it's a great run. They've won cups before. They still have Connor McDavid. For the Florida Panthers, I think it just means a lot more. First of all, they had the 3-0 lead. Second of all, this is a couple of years of build-up to this. And third of all, they've never won a cup. So it kind of seems like it's a feast or famine for the Panthers. For the Oilers, if you would have told them 10 days ago they'd be in this spot, they would have said, great, how the heck do I get there? So it is historically a huge night here at Amerant Bank Arena for the Panthers.
It's going to be exciting. Ticket prices are way up. I've heard from people online on Twitter. I asked how everyone's feeling. Nervous, anxious, sick to their stomach. You're going through all the emotions right now. You were at morning skate this morning. Let's kind of break down this game now. What'd you see? What'd you hear?
Nervous, anxious, sick to my stomach. Pretty much. First off, get the house cleaning out of the way. Sergei Bobrovsky, Aaron Ekblad were both on the ice as expected. They took the day off yesterday, so all good. Game 7 was all the conversation. You know, Ryan Lomberg called this thing, Mike, meeting with the media, bittersweet, because you know it's the last time you're going to be together as a group. You know, teams always change. But for the Panthers, you know, interesting hearing Paul Maurice saying, we want the guys to play with freedom tonight, but you also don't want to try to overdo it and do things that take you out of your game. It's a fine line to walk. The Panthers haven't walked that line very well the last 3 games. So here it is. I mean, this is what everybody plays for. It's 106 games into this season. It's the final week of June, and they're still playing hockey. And I do think when the puck drops, a lot of that pressure of all the things we talk about kind of goes out the window.
Right.
And every shift, when you get to a Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Final, this is only the 18th time it's ever happened. Every shift is like the last shift. The first shift is like an overtime shift because literally, as we know, any play can decide it.
Yeah, that's right. Now, you know, listening to the guys at the podium today and even yesterday and really throughout this entire roller coaster, at least on the surface, they haven't seemed to be showing the pressure and maybe the wear and tear of all of this. Do you think that's genuine? Do you think these guys are as calm as they seem up there when they're talking to the media?
I do think that way because they've been like this for a couple of years. I mean, I told you the story 2 Marches ago when they had to win 13 out of 16 to make the playoffs, and Matthew Tkachuk went, okay, sounds good, thanks for the information. And they go to the playoffs. They're down 3-1 to Boston last year. They went up there for a Game 7 in the first round. Nobody thought they could win. So I think there is a supreme confidence not only in themselves, but in the guys around them, the guys next to them. And I just think they genuinely believe that the next game will be the one where they bring their best. Now, I know a lot of fans are looking at that saying, hang on a second, because you've been outscored more than 3-1 so far in these last 3 games, and they really haven't looked like themselves for the most part. But as players were talking this morning, you know, none of that matters now. It doesn't matter how you got here. If you're up 3-0, down 0-3, it's the same now for both teams because, as you know, and we know as sports fans, what seems like you'll get, and I said that about Edmonton, oh, Connor McDavid, he'll be back again. Well, the same thing was said about Dan Marino when he walked off that field against the 49ers in 1984, and the Dolphins haven't been back to a Super Bowl since then. You never know.
Right. Yeah, you got to take advantage of this while you're here. Now, you mentioned something about the players not looking like themselves the last 3 games. Let's talk about Sergei Bobrovsky specifically, because when you hear the players talk about him, they keep saying that Bob's fine, that it's their fault in front of him. How do you think his confidence is, whether it's whether it's Bob, who's not getting the job done himself, or B, is he confident in the guys in front of him to help him out?
Yeah, I think the second part is the bigger key because, you know, look, you love the goalie to stand on his head, and he did in game one. You know, he stopped a few breakaways in game number one, but of late, the breakaways and the 2-on-1s, which there seems to be a handful every game, they've got to be able to clean that up. Adjustments need to be made in that department and just be harder on it. But all of those are going in the net now. So I would say if I have to go one way or the other, I would more agree with the players because really, those are the goals going in. I mean, for the most part, there's no slap shots from the blue line from 60 feet away that are beating them. They're breakaways.
It's a 2-on-1s.
They're 2-on-1s, and that's exactly what happened in game number 6. For the most part, if you look at it, they played a good defensive game. They held Connor McDavid without a shot on goal. The key tonight is, can they play that kind of defense? It's kind of threefold. Clean up those odd man rushes and still push offensively. You know, they were number 1 in the league, number 2 in the league, Mike, all year long at shots on goal and shot attempts. We saw in the Rangers series 80, 90, 100 shot attempts in games.
All right, Goldie, we've talked enough about this game so far. Let's hear from Matthew Tkachuk and the Panthers, their thoughts on entering Game 7, plus how they got here and why that's not important anymore.
You know, both of us at one point in the series have lost 3 games. Doesn't matter how it's gone. It doesn't matter how you draw it up. Like, you know, they lost first 3 games. We lost the next 3. Like, it's even right now. It doesn't matter what has happened to get to this point. So it's easy to forget. You know, you forget everything that's happened throughout this whole season. Really, the whole season comes down to one game. Like, at home, how could you not be so jacked up for this? This is absolutely incredible opportunity. So. You know, yes, you want to, you know, recognize and remember some of the good things that helped you, you know, beat these guys earlier in the series. But I don't know. I'm trying to forget all of it and just go in there with win this one game. That's what it comes down to.
Well, it's Matthew Tkachuk and the Panthers' job to forget everything and just focus on this game. It is our job not to, because how they got here has been pretty ugly. The power play in particular, just one goal to show for that, you know, that extra man on the ice. In fact, they've got more shorthanded goals given up. How does it get fixed? And is there a fix out there that Paul Maurice is going to at least attempt tonight?
Well, they will attempt. You know, they changed Oliver Ekman-Larsson onto the first power play unit, Brandon Montour on the second unit. Now they'll do the same tonight for this game. Carter Verhaeghe and Vlad Tarasenko will flip-flop spots. By the way, Tarasenko, the only player in the game for either team that's ever played a Game 7 of a Stanley Cup Final. That was the last Game 7 in 2019. His St. Louis Blues beat the Bruins. Is there an answer for it? I mean, you could say simplify, move the puck quicker. I thought they were a little better at it in game number 6. Paul Maurice jokingly said, at least we didn't give up a shorthanded breakaway. They didn't have many opportunities. It was a pretty penalty-free game both ways in Game 6. But at some point, you got to give the other guys credit. They're 46 of the last 47, the Edmonton Oilers, going back in the playoffs. Whatever they're doing, whether it's talent, whether it's coaching, a combination of the two, they are quick, they are aggressive, they are feeling confident. And for the Panthers, what they have to do in the game tonight when they get them is match the intensity of the penalty killers. No one's been able to do that against the Edmonton Oilers for about 5-6 weeks now. But kind of as Tkachuk said, Mike, that really doesn't matter at this point.
Right.
Can they do it tonight? I also do think we're going to have a low number of penalties again. There were only 5 power plays total in game number 6. The referees will call the ones that are clearly penalties, but for the most part, everybody, I think, fans, officials, the league, the player, they want the players to decide.
They want to let them play. I imagine a little bit of swelling of the whistle will happen today. Let's talk about Vladimir Tarasenko. How much does his experience actually become a factor? Do guys lean on him? Do they ask him questions about this, or is this maybe one of those overstated things we do in the media?
I think it's probably somewhere in the middle. I'm not sure guys are seeking him out, but Tarasenko is a big hockey talker anyway.
Yeah.
The Panthers, a lot of players, Paul Maurice have noted when he's on the Barkov line, he's on the bench the whole time talking hockey with Barkov and Reinhart. Now he does it with Eetu Luostarinen and Anton Lundell. So he's a hockey junkie. He's played this thing his entire life. He wanted to come here to South Florida, to be in South Florida, and try to win a Stanley Cup, as we've seen so many players over the last few years in the trade deadline try to do. So having a guy that's been there and done that, it certainly can't hurt. And who knows how Paul Maurice ends up juggling this thing around once the game starts. You know, just because you start one way doesn't mean you finish that way. And I do think tonight's a night, Mike, certainly that if you got a guy that's going, and if that could be a guy that has the experience of Tarasenko, maybe he slides around the lineup a little bit.
Yeah, ride the hot hand if they have to in this one. I think at some point the Panthers have to admit they can't play from behind anymore. They're confident. They say they can handle the 1-goal, 2-goal deficits, but it has not been working the last few nights. All right, this game is so important. We've talked about the history of it, but even just the basic human side of this. We're all kids, you know, playing hoops in our yards, you know, counting down the shot clock or on the ice, you know, pretending it's overtime of Game 7. I think if they play with that kind of freedom, like they're kids again, you know, maybe there is a positive outcome in that. And it's something that Alexander Barkov talked about. He says he actually dreamed of playing in a game like this when he was just growing up, learning the game of hockey.
I was one of those kids for sure that played by himself wherever outdoors or at home or literally anything, and thinking about like, this is Game 7, Stanley Cup playoffs, maybe even like overtime, thinking about those moments. So yeah, I've had many of those memories, and now it's becoming true, and tomorrow for sure exciting, the most exciting time to be a hockey player.
Legacies will be made tonight in this building, in the ice behind us, which they are, by the way, going through the Stanley Cup presentation practice yet again. I think they've practiced that.
They should have it down
right,
by now.
I think they'd have it down by now for sure. Goldie, what would Paul Maurice's legacy be here, win or lose tonight?
Well, first of all, I do want to say that Barkov said that. Pretty interesting what you brought up, because Connor McDavid, ironically enough, 9 years ago, this month, was drafted in this building, first overall in 2015, and his mom told the story that night that he's always dreamed of being in the NHL. He'd yell up from the basement when he was playing his little knee hockey, "Mom, I just scored the game-winning goal in the Stanley Cup," and his mom said she'd yell back down, "That's nice, honey." So everybody's got a story like that. For Paul Maurice, Mike, he's been doing this for 26 years. It's incredible the staying power that he's got. He's second most in games coached. But he said it before the series started. You know, they asked him, "Do you need to win a Stanley?" He goes, "I need one. I have to have one."
Pretty honest.
And his team with that kind of lead, he's more of a mental coach, I think. I mean, this is the 10th day in a row the Florida Panthers have woken up one game away from a Stanley Cup championship. That really doesn't happen in sports. You know, I mean, except for a Super Bowl, if you have a 2-week break, so you know it's one game. But when you have a series going on, that really doesn't happen. So I think Paul Maurice has to have his finger on the pulse of his team the last 48 hours. I believe he did. He said that this morning. What he says to them before the game, you know, you wonder, is it going to be the speech of his life? I don't think it needs to be a huge motivational speech because of what guys say. They all know what's at stake. They've been dreaming of this. But yeah, there's no way around it, Mike. You either win or you lose. They keep score in sports for a reason. And Paul Maurice himself said, "I need one." And this may be his best opportunity, being one game away. What
kind of black eye would this leave on South Florida sports if the Cats don't clinch this tonight?
Well, you know, we're kind of a target anyway. A lot of times. I think a lot of it personally is jealousy, because everybody wants to be in South Florida, so they're not happy they're here. But of course, you don't want to have this kind of loss when you're up 3-0. It's only happened once in the Stanley Cup Final. That was way back in 1942, which, by the way, the team that came back, which was Toronto, was actually better than the team that was up 3-0. I mean, there was a 6-team league, and the Red Wings finished 5th that year, and they happened to get a 3-0 lead. So, you know, you just don't want it. That's the bottom line. Third Game 7 in the history of South Florida at home. The Marlins won their game. The Heat won their game. The Panthers trying to do the same.
We've been in those buildings for Game 7s. I remember being there for the Heat when they beat the Spurs, and American Airlines Arena at that time.
We have a couple names since.
Was extremely loud. With each shot, you think the top was going to pop off. What do you think it's going to be like here tonight?
Oh, it'll be wild. By the way, Pro Player I believe it was Pro Player in '97.
It was Pro Player,
It was pretty wild when Edgar Renteria got the hit too, and Craig Counsell scored. It'll be nuts in here tonight because no one's ever experienced it. This is only the second Game 7 in this building's history. Ironically enough, the Panthers lost Game 7 in double overtime, first round of the Devils 12 years ago, and Adam Henrique, who incredibly is on the Edmonton Oilers, scored that goal. I mean, you can't even imagine that. And this is just the 4th Game 7 ever for the Panthers. Now, they're 2-1. They beat the Bruins last year in Game 7, but if you kind of like what Mike McDaniel said at the mini camp press conference when they asked if he's going to be watching the Panthers, and he said, yeah, I have a pulse.
Right.
I mean, if you have a pulse, it's off the charts here tonight, and you know there were some charter planes, from what I understand, of Edmonton Oilers fans.
Yep.
So you're going to probably have, I don't know, there's 20,000 people in the building. You'll probably have 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 Edmonton Oilers fans. They haven't won in more than 30 years, so a lot of those people haven't seen one or remember one. So it's going to be nuts in here, and hopefully the Panthers over the 60 minutes can pull through and get this victory.
Yeah, Matthew Tkachuk yesterday talked about harnessing that crowd here at Amerant Bank. We'll see if they can do it. Let's listen to Chucky talking about the hometown fans.
It's huge. It's, the opportunity to do it at home ice. Crowd on our side cheering for us. Again, this is going to be the loudest this building's probably ever been. So excited on both sides, as players and fans. It should be a fun one.
It's probably going to be the loudest rink I've ever been in my life, is what I'm expecting. It's I mean, you can't even describe the feeling of excitement. I can't even express the feeling of excitement around the city right now with everybody. The build up throughout this whole season and throughout the whole playoffs just comes down to this. So I'm expecting it to be as loud as any building I've ever heard in my life.
And that is saying something, because Rogers Place in Edmonton is very loud when the Oilers are running downhill, and they can feel it in that third period. It turns into karaoke. That fan base is pretty wild, but I'll tell you what, the Panthers have done a good job. Their fans have made this place a really fun place to play. So with that, with everything we've said, Goldie, we talked about predictions on Sports Desk. If you didn't see Sports Desk last night, do you want to reiterate your prediction for this one?
I'm going to stay with it. I'm going to give everybody total heart attacks. I'm going 3-2 Panthers in overtime.
Yep.
Overtime's in Game 7. You don't get any better than that in sports. This team has just come too far. 106 games this year, Mike. 209 games since the start of last year. I just think they've come too far to back down now, and they find a way to get it done.
I'm with you. I think the Panthers win in overtime. I think when it gets to overtime, the fan base, the crowd, becomes an extra man on the ice, and I think that ends up being the difference. We'll see if the Cats can be that great third period team they've been all year and finally clinch this cup. If not, it's flying back to Edmonton on those chartered flights that Goldie talked about. Until next time, well, there is no next time. No Game 8. No Game 8. All that's left now is a parade for someone. So, Goldie, thank you.
Maybe a hunt for Lombardi in football in the fall with the
We'll do this in February, maybe. Goldie, thank you so much. Bruno, our photojournalist, here with us. He's been doing all these shows with us, and Leo
Plus,
Gomez.
he stepped up because he didn't go right to Edmonton with the connections.
No.
Bruno went to Calgary and did the drive. That's the impressive thing.
He tried to bring a little bit of that Calgary Flames mojo over to Edmonton try to maybe make the Edmonton Oilers fans a little mad. But
cruising around Alberta.
It worked for Game 3, not for Games 4 or 6. But anyway, seriously, thank you guys for watching all playoffs long. It's been a lot of fun. We'll see what happens tonight, but you can catch us on the CBS Miami news at 11. And, of course, if there is a win tonight, we'll be on with you guys late into the night enjoying a Stanley Cup win. Thanks for watching.
Hunt for the Cup on CBS News Miami is sponsored by your Volkswagen dealers of South Florida. Check out local offers at VWFlorida.com.